began to sing when I was a little girl with my two sisters and my mother and my father, with my brother taking photographs. And the family that I came from was intensely musical, and when I say intensely, I mean it wasn't just, it was a lifestyle. We lived and breathed music.
And for the next 2 hours, Carly Simon, in her own words and through her music, will reveal the personal side of her life and career.
I am essentially a very shy person, and yet my songs do reveal so much about me. But I don't think it's that much of a paradox, because I feel that extroversion and shyness often go hand in hand. I've never felt odd about revealing too much of myself in a song. In the first place, I don't put my autobiographical signature at the end of a song. I mean, nobody knows, in fact, that it's about me. It could be about my best friend. It could be a little bit about me. It could be about a character I've just read about in a book. People somehow feel that my songs are all about me, and I do take a certain amount of poetic license. I do add fiction to it. I don't stick solely to the events of my life, and so it's all like a little bit tangled up in there. But no, I don't have a sense of self-consciousness about revealing myself in songs. I don't know why. It's not as if I've made a conscious choice to do it. It's simply I don't know another way to do it. My father was a pianist. My mother sang constantly when we were children and around the house and out of doors and in all contexts. We had songs for everything. I mean, we didn't just have songs as songs, but we made up songs so we could remember our addresses. I mean, we were definitely a musical family, to say the least. And that's where it all began. It wasn't so much that we had a lot of training. The extent of my musical training is about 2 years of piano when I was a little girl. Like a little bit past chopsticks is where I left off. The very first song that I wrote was when I was in college. I started writing music to Italian poems because I was studying Italian, and I've never been very good at memorizing anything. And the only way that I could memorize things was to turn them into songs, because I could somehow get a much better handle on the words if there was music attached to them. And so I started to write music, playing the guitar to accompany myself to these Italian poems. I mean, I remember being 17 and sitting on my bed and picking up the guitar and kind of liking the sound of my own voice and the way the guitar sounded with it, and picking out a poem that would be short enough that wouldn't be too taxing, that I could write a melody to, you know.
Carly Simon's closeness with her sister Lucy resulted in their performing as a duo.
We turned professional accidentally one summer when I was a sophomore in college, going into my sophomore year in college. Lucy was in nursing school, and we decided that we wanted to have a paid summer holiday. So I knew 3 chords on the guitar, and she knew 3 chords. And we combined our great fund of knowledge and took our guitars up to Provincetown, Massachusetts, where we got a job immediately at a place called the Moors, which had just lost its male singer. And they were open to the possibility of 2 girls who knew 6 chords. And so they hired us, and we worked there for a summer and got paid, I think, $35 a week each. Anyway, during that summer, we learned more songs, and I think we may have even started to write some songs. And we just turned into musical people that summer and came back in the fall, and we found a manager who booked us into the bitter end, which is now the other end. And we sang there. We opened the show for the likes of Woody Allen and Dick Cavett, who were also starting their careers as comedians at that time. And we began to sing there quite a bit, and I remember taking the train back to Bronxville. I was going to Sarah Lawrence at around 1 o'clock at night and trying to read my Russian literature and going to bed, and then trying to keep my eyes open the next day in class.
We continue our special with the words and music of Carly Simon.
My sisters and I were, as young children, very normal as far as being competitive, sibling rivalry, fights over clothes, who was going to get what, who got more attention from the parents, who got to stay up the latest, you know, everything that every group of sisters or every group of siblings goes through. As we grew older, we're all about 2.5 years apart, and we all got interested in a lot of the same things. We all were interested in music. We were all interested in boys. We were all interested in clothes and interested in human motivation, interested in literature. I mean, you know, our personalities are not necessarily similar, but very attractive to each other. And so we've stayed very, very close over the years, and our common interests have certainly brought us a lot closer. And there is a sense of competition between us, although it hasn't been altogether unhealthy. I don't think the competition is an unhealthy thing. She rides in the front seat. She's my older sister. That's about the competitiveness. At a particular age in my high school career, I didn't want to be me at all. I just wanted to be Lucy. She had all the boys interested in her. She was a cheerleader. She wore her hair over one eye, a la Veronica Lake. She was great looking. She had everything I wanted. I think everybody is insecure about their looks. And I had more cause to be than, for instance, either of my sisters, because they were more classically beautiful than I, and this was kind of common knowledge, at least at that time, when a certain kind of looks were more in vogue than my kind of looks, which are more offbeat, which, thank God, some people find appealing. When my debut album came out, I think it was the propitious moment for me. It was the time when my looks were coming into being acceptable. My music seemed to follow, and the two of them merged in a successful enough way for people to be intrigued.
When Carly Simon returns, she'll be sharing the story behind one of her best-known songs. We return with more Words and Music by Carly Simon.
The person who was responsible for bringing to the attention of Elektra Records my voice and my songwriting potential was Jerry Brandt. He heard me over at my friend Jake Brackman's house. He heard me play the piano and sing, and he said that we should get together as manager and client, and that he should help me get a record deal. So we signed a deal, and then he put up the money for a proper demo, and I went into the studio with David, producer of the demo, and we put down 4 songs, and Jerry then brought the tape to Elektra and to Columbia, and Elektra said yes. And then I went in and made my first record. Jake Brackman and I met in the summer of 1968 at Indian Hill Camp in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, where he was the literature teacher and I was the guitar teacher. And we became friends. It was a friendship which is one of the strongest friendships of my life. I mean, he's definitely one of my closest friends. And we didn't write together or anything at that point, and it wasn't until about a year or two later that I was writing the music for a CBS or NBC special called Who Killed Lake Erie? And it was about the pollution and the dead fish and the oil spills and everything in Lake Erie. And I wrote some music for that, some of which was never used. And included in the music that was never used was the melody for That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be. And I tried to write a lyric to it myself and had no luck. And Jake had expressed some interest in trying to write a lyric for anything at that point. And so I asked him if he would try a lyric for that. And we talked about the subject matter and what it would be, and we honed it down, and it became That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be. I'm a little bit sorry that I sold Anticipation to the Heinz Ketchup people, although I think they did a grand job with it. But I don't know, people associating Anticipation with ketchup is not exactly what I had in mind when I wrote the song. My reaction to my first success, which of course seems to everybody else like an overnight success, and which to me seemed as if I'd been working very, very hard for a long time to attain it. I, in fact, I had been writing for years. I'd been trying to get my tapes listened to. I'd been trying to get my songs heard. I'd been trying to get other artists to do my songs. And for 6 years, nothing had happened, because I was working from the age of like 19 or 20. Every week I got back in the mail, I got letters saying, "I'm sorry, Miss Simon, we enjoyed your songs very much, but we find that we can't use them," or I would never get letters back, or I would get my tapes just returned, or I would never get my tapes returned. But there was never any acceptance, and I, of course, went through years of thinking that maybe I was no good, and I really owe it to my family, who, were constantly saying, "Carly, you are good, just keep on going, you are good, and someday talent will out." Well, I have known you. So it didn't seem like an overnight success at all to me. I mean, it was something that I'd worked hard for. It's true I hadn't studied, but I worked all the time. I was always writing and singing and trying new things and getting involved in different little projects that didn't work out. I worked at one point as a straight man in like a comedian act with David Steinberg and Severin Darden. You know, I tried that, and well, I worked in a production company as a secretary for about a year, as a talent coordinator on a TV show. I mean, I did all kinds of little things while I was trying to break into show business.
We continue with more of the very special words and music of Carly Simon.
One of us slipped last night. The most significant way that I've changed in the past 10 years is in realizing that I myself am the one that is going to have to do the changing, and that no matter how much therapy or help from the outside I get, that's not the important thing. The important thing is that I make the decision to change and that I follow that decision.
We now continue with the second half of the very special words and music of Carly Simon with a song that went to the #1 spot on the record charts.
You're So Vain was written over the period of about a year. I was keeping a journal at the time, and I wrote down the line, "You're so vain, you probably think the song is about you." And I thought, well, that's something I can probably use one day. And so I then wrote a song called "Bless You, Ben," and I liked the melody, but I didn't like the words. So that was the melody to "You're So Vain." So I scrapped the words, and I started out with some verses about a man who thought a great deal of himself. And I thought, aha, that chorus about "You're so vain, you probably think the song is about you" would go perfectly with these verses about this man who's so vain that he walks into a party as if he was walking onto a yacht, and he thinks all the girls adore him. And so I put them together, and it just came true as a song.
You're So Vain isn't the only Carly Simon song with Ben in its original title. Carly will name the other one when we return with more of the Carly Simon special.
Jessie was inspired by a song that Jacques Brel wrote, and I can't remember the name of the Jacques Brel song, but it was a song about a turnaround, where you do a complete turnaround in your conviction about how you're going to act in a situation. And in his song, it was that, no, this girl was not going to come back into his life. And then all of a sudden, there was no way of not letting her back into his life, and he was enthusiastic about her coming back. But it's a song that I can totally identify with, but about pushing somebody away and away and away, and everybody tells you he's no good for you, and then all of a sudden there he is, and there's no way that you could ever want to keep him away because he's so attractive and wonderful, and you love him after all. Vengeance is a real angry song. It's one of my angriest songs. I think it had to do with some kind of retaliation that I felt I wanted to commit on somebody who was peering too closely into my life in some way,
Carly Simon will talk about her marriage to singer James Taylor when we return.